Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome along to the Rangers Rabble Podcast. I am Bryan, the host today, and I am delighted to say I'm joined by Charlie from Progress with Unity's podcast, or Central Wigan podcast.
Both, to be honest. Central Wigan is my main page, but yeah, I'm on the Progress with Unity podcast, which is more of a panel show, a bit like the Rangers Rabble.
Perfect. So we're obviously here to speak about Thelo Aasgaard, or Aasgaard, or Aasgaard, as some are saying. I hate saying some of these foreign names because you like to get them correct, and I believe, Charlie, you fell foul of that.
Yeah, when he first started coming through, there was a few Thelos got knocked about, but he came out and he said, no, it's Thelo. Like, it's kind of a silent H, if you like. And then, yeah, I think we called him Thelo Aasgaard, but I think when you go to Norway, it's more like Aasgaard, and they spell his name differently when he's playing for Norway as well. So it gets a bit confusing, but I always stuck with Thelo Aasgaard.
Absolutely. Of course, that's the Thor movies and stuff. So, but We're here to speak about the young lad. He's just signed to Rangers from Luton, but he grew up and was obviously in your youth team. So we thought, well, there's no better people to speak about him than yourselves. Obviously came through the Wigan youth ranks and then broke into the first team. Was there a lot of chatter when he was in the youth team and sort of building up to, breaking into the first team?
Yeah, there was. I mean, he spent an early stint. I think he was 13 or 14, and he did a year with Liverpool in their youth system. And obviously, you can imagine how competitive that is. And he ended up coming to us, I think, at the age of 14, played in our under-15s. And there was a goal, actually, that he scored. I think it was against Blackburn Rovers in the U15s game, a Rabona from outside on the edge of the area, really. And I think he was a kid that always had a lot of flair about him. And he became one of our scholars at under-16 level, got a 2-year scholarship that was going to take him through to under-18. But he struggled a lot with injuries. He was never the biggest player, quite slim build as well. And I think naturally through growing pains, he really struggled in that 2-year scholarship. And luckily for him, we had Gregor Riok, who was our academy manager. He's now our sporting director. But he was somebody who really gave him a lot of patience and said, look, you've got to build yourself up. What we'll do is we'll give you a third scholarship year, which not many players get. And then he ended up doing that. And he made his comeback from injuries, I think, against Manchester United in the FA Youth Cup, came on sort of late on, and then started to show a lot of progress again as a sort of an attacking flair player, somebody you can get a little bit excited about. So yeah, throughout our academy, he was always somebody that was on the verge of, he looks like he could be a star for the future. And luckily, he actually managed to then go and break into the first team.
Absolutely. And of course, when we heard the interview initially, we were expecting to hear this broad Norwegian, but then of course out came the Scouse accent. So that confused a lot of fans. But obviously, as you say, he was at Liverpool at one point. As you say, it was as you rightly point out, it's a very difficult youth team to get into at Liverpool because it's so competitive and a big club that Liverpool are. But he's 163 games for Wigan, 30 goals. So not a bad goal return for an attacking midfielder. Yeah,
we actually hit 100 league appearances by 21, which for a young player who's struggled with injuries as well, especially coming up in his late teen years, that's very impressive. But a lot of that came down to in July 2020, we got plunged into administration overnight, basically by our owners. It's a very strange situation, but that's a story for another time. But we've ended up losing about 30 players across the board through all under 21s, senior team, and under 18s. But Thelo was one that stayed. And because of our sort of rebuild that we had to go into, and he only just signed a professional contract at the end of the 19-20 season. So he signed that. We go straight into administration. But he said, no, I'm going to stay and try and play. And we really needed him for the 2021 season. He played a lot of football, having to make the step up for us. And yeah, through that, he got a lot of game time. And I think he struggled a little bit when we got Will Keane because they're two very similar profile players playing the same sort of attacking 10 position, if you like. So I think he went from maybe 40-something appearances down to 5 for the next season. And that was obviously trying to rebuild up, get his full match fitness. Like I was saying, he was quite a slim build. But then eventually when he came back, he'd really bulked up and you thought, okay, he's definitely been in the gym. He's definitely been working on himself. And then he became just a key player. And eventually Will Keane moved on. We went through another near administration. We were basically days away from extinction again a few years later under another ownership. Will Keane ended up departing and he went to Preston and he handed the number 10 shirt over to Thelo Aasgaard. And he was like, right, you're the one to take over now. And Keane was amazing for us, Golden Boot winner when we won League One. So for Thelo to take that shirt was a big responsibility, but running. And I think he hit 8 goals and 3 assists, maybe in the 23-24 season, which was the best return ever up to that point. First time he'd ever got over 10 goals and assists combined. So yeah, he really became a really, really good player. I was a little bit worried in his early days. I thought it's too nice to play the number 10. You know, you get them players who they don't really want to press the defense too much. They don't want to get too physical, but that's come now. And his final stint with us, and I saw it a bit at Luton as well, he started to develop into that really key number 10 player.
Yeah, I was going to speak about his physicality because naturally you see sort of wingers and sort of skillful players. He's 6'1", isn't he? He's a big lad.
Yeah,
he's
very big.
Height's not a thing you would associate with sort of flair players and stuff. So if we're going on his physicality, as you say, he's had injuries, but he is the injuries sort of behind him, and is that down to his sort of work ethic and hitting the gym?
Yeah, I think it is. And he spoke a lot about, he just signed a new contract extension for us a while ago. And in that interview, he was talking about his early injuries in the academy. And he was in digs at the time, where players live with like host families. Yeah. And he was in there and he said that being injured, but also living in digs was really tough on him. And he ended up having to do a lot of studying of the game and develop his tactical side because obviously he couldn't play. And when he came back, you could see that IQ. And I think naturally now he's grown, like you're saying, to somebody who's over 6 foot. It must be that Norwegian blood because Haaland's massive as well, isn't he? So, yeah. But he's really grown into that big player. He did have a bit of a shoulder injury when he came to us, but that's just a knock that any player can pick up. But the early stages, I think, were more his legs, when he's growing, and he was growing at a rapid pace as well. So naturally his body had to catch up. But he seems to be in very good physical health, and he's not a player that you can expect to, see photos of him on nights out before games or, evading training, doing little things. He's very, very driven. He's quite a quiet lad. I think that's something you might find, but he started to find his confidence a little bit. But a lot of his teammates in other interviews, they said, when we're traveling, he's got his headphones on. He makes music on the side as well. So he puts little albums out, but apparently he's always been very quiet, like mixing his own stuff, like keeps himself to himself. And I remember early days when he was scoring goals, he scored some belters. And I know in his interviews talking about shooting from long range. We'll get onto that in a second. He's fantastic at it. But he'd score some belters and he'd just kind of stand there and do like a little fist pump to the crowd. And you're like, come on, Thelo. And it was his teammates actually were like sometimes pushing him to the crowd, being like, go and celebrate. And now he's got his he does the Jokeres celebration and stuff. So you can see he's got his confidence back. Yeah,
absolutely. And as you rightly said there, he said in his interview, he likes to score from distance. He just likes to play football in general. But what's his? If you're sort of as Rangers fans, what are we expecting from Thelo? What are we gonna get as a player?
He sometimes played a bit on the left wing for us. I'm not too fan of him out on the left wing. I think he can sometimes be a little bit isolated. I loved him in the number 10. Maybe he can drift a little bit further to the left if he needs to. He's sort of a little bit more comfortable on that side. But it's because he's got a fantastic right foot as well. And obviously, if you're shooting a bit more from the left, you got a better angle to shoot sometimes, get a little bit more power on it. So I'd say that he's a very progressive player as well. In our final season, it was with us. Obviously, he left us in the January. He was playing with somebody from Forest who was on loan called Dale Taylor. He's quite a deep lying number 9, so he's more of a number 10 crossed with a number 9. But him and Thelo had a really good partnership, so they were both kind of coming deep at times to collect the ball, but had a really good link up. And sometimes Thelo would be the one to go long and try and get in behind the defense. Sometimes Dale would, and you'd see these beautiful balls coming through from Thelo. So he's somebody that adores that little pocket of space that you can sometimes get with a 10, but he will push forward and sometimes be the most advanced player. Sometimes he might go out wide, but with his height as well, he's got a long stride in him. So if he does pick the ball up in the midfield and he's got acres of space to run into, he can set off, and then he doesn't always need to get into the box. He's got that great shot from long range. It's got a lot of power and placement on it as well. Sometimes he makes it look very easy. We played Mansfield Town in the FA Cup last year, and this is a goal that people can go back and watch. And he just sort of picked the ball up on the edge of the box, and a left-footed shot this time. And he just curled it into the far corner, and you think, you've made it look so easy doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously he's been called up to the Norwegian squad fairly recently. Obviously, you just mentioned his name there. Haaland's in the Norwegian squad. Now, is it fair to say sort of guys like Thelo are going to look at Haaland and want to emulate him physically and, use him as a role model?
Yeah, I think so. And Telo's been around the Norway squad, I think, since under 16. So he's kind of been picked up early on, but with his growing pains and things it was going through, he had to withdraw from a couple of squads. And then he went up to the under 21s and he was fantastic for them. Not always a regular player, but when they were going through their Euro under 21 qualifiers, obviously we just had the Euros and Norway didn't quite make it, but they got very close to they got it to the playoff actually. And I watched every game that Thelo played. I was always there on the streams watching. And he'd always make a very big impact every time he came on. And you could see that he was one of the better talents in that under-21 side who were already full of a lot of talent, a bit like a Lasse Nordas who's still at Luton as well. And it came down to Ireland under-21s versus Norway under-21s. And Norway needed to get a goal, basically. I think they were 1 down to Ireland at the time. Thelo comes on. Fantastic strike from the edge of the box, forces the keeper into a save, and they get a goal that sends them into the playoffs. They played Finland, lost 5-1. Thelo didn't play in that game. But yeah, you could see that, okay, the next step for him is to try and get into the senior squad. And when he moved from us in League One to Luton in the Championship, it was always a risky move. They were so close to the relegation zone. A lot of us at the time said you could probably held out for a move that secured your Championship status rather than maybe being one that you drop back down. And eventually when he dropped back down, it was the Norway national team manager came out and said, if you want to play for the senior team, you've got to move away from League One. You can't play there. So obviously he's naturally been looking, and we expected a move like this. But I think to go to Rangers and have the Scottish Premiership, but also I think you're in Champions League football.
Qualifiers, yes. Qualifiers. Yes.
To have that at your disposal, to then get all this experience as well. And then he's looking at players like Haaland or Ødegaard as well as, I really want to be in and around them players. I think it's great for him. And I watched his debut for Norway senior team. I'm sure he scored on debut. I think it was a tap in the box, in the 6-yard box. But you can just see how much he's grown as a player to get there.
Absolutely. And our very own, one of our own guys, Ian Thompson's put a really good question in here, if I can just find it. So would you suggest that Ian's asking, he's a natural number 10?
Yeah, I would say so. Sometimes we saw him sometimes as part of a double pivot, it's a little bit deeper in the midfield, more central. I wasn't too convinced on him around there at the time. I think that his ability is around that number 10 positions. But like I was saying before, he's a little bit too nice. I think he's perhaps still a little bit too nice to play an out-and-out number 9 role. I think that's definitely coming where he's starting to learn that edge to be able to play that. But when he's in the number 10 role, he's very good at the link-up play. He's got a great long ball on him as well. So if there's a player out wide, he can dink them in behind, no problem. And I think that it sort of allows him to be the one to run into the box and progress from that number 10 position if a cross comes in. And he'll jump in the air. He's got the height on him, so he's started to score a lot of headers as well. So, yeah, I would say he's a natural number 10, I would say.
Yeah, and William, one of our members, put in, he says, yeah, this is what I said yesterday after watching him. I think he'll get goals from arriving late in the box, and that's something you said as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where he'll be. I remember he scored against Fleetwood, a really nice header when he ran into the box. I'm sure he scored one against Oxford as well. So doing that sort of thing he's very talented at. And
do you think this guy has the ability to be a top pro? So, is there a sort of possibility that, say, there's, he does really well playing for Rangers in Europe, does well in the league? Is there a chance that a Premiership team will come snapping for him?
It's an interesting question because obviously we've been blessed with a lot of academy players who've come and gone on to higher levels, and you always hope that one's going to go right to the top. Like Harry Redknapp was talking about, Lampard goes right to the very top. You always hope that you can have that you can put that feather in your cap of, oh, it came from us. I think with Aasgaard, I really do think that he can make it. He's a player that I think has grown a lot already. I don't think he's anywhere near his ceiling as of yet. I think he's got a long way to go, and I think going to Rangers is going to be great for him, and he really needs to be tested at the higher level. But he's a player who's got, like I was saying, he's got that confidence now, and it shows in subtle ways like the celebrations. And we played against Bolton last year, and if anyone knows the Wigan-Bolton rivalry is a bit of the derby days, you always get a bit of a classic sometimes. Not the most recent one because we lost that, but that's okay. We can put that one to the side. But in the first one, Thelo was absolutely phenomenal. And if anyone wants to go watch the highlights of that, go and watch them. A ball came in from the left, and Thelo on the turn brought it down and put it through another player's legs to get a shot away and have a goal. And you just think, this guy is just way better than anybody really in our team. And we had a few talents in our team, but Thelo was the shining light, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul's asking a good question here as well. Was Thelo about the youth ranks at Liverpool when Gerrard was at Liverpool?
How old would he have been then?
I think it was 18, 19 Gerrard was there, was it? Or 17, 18 seasons?
Thelo would have been in the academy there 2015, maybe 2015,
Right.
2016. So yeah, possibly they would have had a bit of an overlap.
Ah, interesting. So yeah, so I mean, having a guy like Gerrard, you know, in the player that Gerrard was, you know, if you've got him coaching you, you know, that must give you a complete, you know, if he's giving you pointers, and you know, because there wasn't many better number 8s than him, was there?
No, not really. You're going to be hard pressed to find one. But Telo's middle name, well, his full name is actually Thelonious Gerrard Aasgaard. So make of that what you will.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, there's fans obviously out and about today. And Will Sanderson, I know very well, he is in the Loudon currently, because we've got a friendly against Bruges later on. So enjoy the day, Will. Hope you have a good day. So to sort of sum him up, Charlie, do you expect Thelo to be? Is he going to hit the ground running straight away, or is he one of these guys that just takes a little bit of time just to get into things?
It's going to be an interesting one, because I'm not sure how much the Luton move may have knocked him a little bit. You know, obviously going up and having the dream of being in the Championship again. He was in the Championship with us when we were in there, but getting back there on his own merit, having that sort of transfer, which came with a relegation. I don't know, you know, has his confidence dipped? I'm not too sure. I think the relegation was definitely going to happen. I said at the start when he went, I thought it was a very risky move, but you know, I think he's a top professional, so I don't think he's really going to be knocked too much by it. It might take him, you know, a month or something, but I think it's a good time for him to make the move as well. Like you're saying, you've got preseason games currently going on. It's better to get it done now than later on. So hopefully once you get into the rhythm of the league season, I think he's definitely going to be fighting for a regular starting spot. I think he's won't take too long to get that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what was the main crux of the move to Luton? Because he was only there for 6 months. He was obviously in your youth team, so it was when I was looking at that, I was kind of sort of puzzled why he made the move to Luton. You know, I appreciate that he was playing in the Championship, but as you said before, Luton was obviously going down anyway. So as you say, that was a strange move, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been languishing a little bit down in the bottom half of League One recently. We've only just got back really from our financial troubles at the last, near extinction. We had an HMRC winding up order and everything. So it's been very hard to get back to sort of the heights that we're kind of used to. We've won the League One 3 times in the last 10 years. So being around 12th at the moment is a bit of a shock to the system. We're like, why are we here? But I think, Thelo, he deserved the move up. I don't understand why. I can't imagine that Luton were the only team that were in for him. I think there would have been a lot of teams, at the door looking for him. But at the time, Luton were splashing a lot of cash to try and get players in, I think just to try and make sure they didn't go down on some kind of miracle. And unfortunately, they brought in Lasse Nordas, who was Telo's teammate in under-21s at Norway. They brought in Thelo. They brought in Melanie Callie, I think, had a very good time at Exeter City, I think. So they brought in a few players that should have hopefully been exciting for them, but I think they also got beat 5-1 on the final day, or maybe the penultimate day or something. So it was a really difficult time for them. And it's just a move that unfortunately just didn't work out, but it looked doomed from the start, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Luton was, they've been in free fall since the Premiership sort of relegation, haven't they? So, it's been a hard watch to watch a team go, consecutive relegations. But final question for me, and how much did Luton pay for Thelo, and will Wigan benefit from any add-ons?
We'll get a little bit. I don't think we'll get too much. I'm sure they paid about 3 million for him, 3.5 million, which we've had a few players go. Charlie Hughes went to Hull. I know he was about 3 million-ish. Thelo obviously went. So we've made quite a bit of money, but I think from the sell-ons, I think we'll get a little bit. I don't think it'll be too much, but that's football, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, yourselves, you finished mid-table last season with 15th, I believe, in the league. Looking forward to this season at Wigan? Yeah,
we've had a big change. So Sean Maloney, who some Rangers Rabble people might be cursing at the screen because obviously his Celtic links and everything, but he was our manager. He came back. He came to us just before we went through the near extinction, and he absolutely worked wonders for us. I mean, he's a club legend in his own right for us as a player. And then to stand by us and basically help rebuild the club to make sure we actually had a club, it was pretty much all down to Sean Maloney and Gregor Rioch and everything that they did. So he helped us get into, sort of some stability, but his results, unfortunately, like last year, we picked up the most draws that we've picked up in the last decade, at least with 17. We just couldn't get those wins. And Maloney ended up getting replaced in March by Ryan Lowe, former Bury, Preston, Plymouth. So he's now our manager, building quite an exciting sort of team. So there was a player from the Scottish Premiership, Fraser Murray. He's a big Rangers fan. We've just got him in on the left wing. So I like the squad that we're building. I think hopefully this year, I don't think we'll get playoffs. I would love to see it if we get playoffs, but I think just breaking into that top 10, that's good enough for me.
Absolutely, because as you say, you've had a lot of testing times recently, and so getting to sort of top 10 and touching the sort of playoffs would be a good sort of season, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be great. I mean, like I was saying, with 3 League One titles under our belt, so I would love to go and see us do it. But League One's getting a lot more competitive and a lot more tricky to get out of. There's a lot of teams coming in with money, like you saw Birmingham and Wrexham last year just came in, spent the cash and went up. Yes, the cash doesn't always just get you up. They were playing very attractive football and they deserve to go up. But there's also teams in the league like Stockport County, Doncaster Rovers are coming back up, Bradford City, who were once obviously Premier League, they're rising. Yeah, they're rising back up from League Two, so they're in our league, and they've taken a lot of our old players. So it's gonna be interesting. But I love this sort of level. I'm not a big fan of Premier League. I would love to get that back there one day, but sort of the lower league, scrappier football is what I love.
Well, it's more sort of the truer form of football, isn't it? It's the passion is there. The proper, for me, a lot of people feel that the Premiership is like a tourist league. It's not the real fans that have supported the club since 5-year-old and stuff like that. There's a lot of hangers on and a lot of just people that have just suddenly started supporting them. So yeah, I tend to agree that the lower league in England is the true fans sort of clubs, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. I even love watching the Scottish leagues as well. Obviously, I only really watch the football, when we've got players out on loan there. But I watched a lot of Inverness, Caledonian Thistle when James Carragher was there, Ayr United when Harry McHugh was there. So yeah, sometimes I dabble in Scottish football, which is always an entertaining one.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you'll see the progress of Thelo and the European qualifiers and obviously the league. We've got a couple of new members just to say hello to. Alice Blue, thank you for joining us as a YouTube member. Much appreciated. And Sheikh Mahan, thank you very much for joining as well. I hope you enjoy all the new benefits that come with being a member. Charlie, thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoyed that little insight into the new player, Thelo Aasgaard or Aasgaard? Pronounce it how you wish. It's right anyway. But Charlie, thank you for the insight. Much appreciated. Yeah,
no worries. Thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, folks. And of course, at 1:15, we are doing a build-up to the Bruges game. We'll then have the watch-along for the Bruges game and then the reaction to the Bruges game. So it's all go today. The season is pretty much nearly kicking off. As I say, this is the first pre-season, but this is the first game that we're going to see Russell Martin and his new look team trying out today against Club Bruges, a very good European team. So big test. But as I say, thank you very much to everybody in the comments. My thanks to Charlie, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.